Oh, hey.
Hey,
Hi, friend.
how you doing?
This. So excited. It's so excited. Welcome to On the Vanguard. My name is Jadida Eisler.
I am Anika Harriet.
I am an astrophysicist. I study space and black holes. Really excited to understand how they work. That's where my jam is. I'm also founder of VanguardSTEM and wonderfully excited co-host to my esteemed colleague.
Again, I'm Anika Harriet. I'm a PhD candidate studying biochemistry and molecular biology, more specifically muscles and all the ways that they move.
That's awesome. Y'all, welcome to On the Vanguard. We're doing it a little different today. So we trying to get our feelings right about it. We're recording asynchronously. How do you feel about that, Anika?
Feels like a whole new adventure.
Exactly. But we gonna premiere it live for y'all. So just know that we're watching us like you're watching us all together. So that'll be fun for later. Today, we're doing something that we have been dreaming of doing for quite some time. We have been threatening and hyping and signal boosting the peer-reviewed paper that we wrote all year, and we've been so excited about it. And so this show is a deep dive into that article. And it's a blessing and a pleasure to be here with Anika. We'll be walking you through the paper, but we're so excited about it. So Anika, tell us all about this paper. Tell us about this show. Oh, wait, before we do that, I guess tell us what we're supposed to do in this space.
All right, I was gonna say, because just because we're not live doesn't mean y'all can act up in the comments. So I would just like to remind everybody that, listen, this is our space that we have especially curated for Black, Indigenous, women of color, non-binary people of color in STEM. And so y'all gotta respect this space, okay? No isms, no phobias, no foolishness in the comments. Your comments will be deleted and you will be blocked.
Completely blocked. Thank you so much. And we are premiering this show on YouTube. So if you aren't already subscribing, go ahead and hit the box. You know you need to hit that button so you can get all of our hot, fresh content, which we are very excited about. Also, shout out to the entire team who works behind the scenes to make this work. By the time you see this, Geraldine Ezeka will have been live tweeting it. Kayla might be in the comments. You might see the whole team there. So thank you for that. And also welcome to Ariana Long, who's helping us with our guerrilla mentoring. So we're very excited about our team. And so, but definitely, even though we're not live, please do engage in comments because we are out here in these streets watching what you're doing. So please come share. So with that being that, listen, we're going to talk this article. We're calling this a deep dive into the hyperspace, the VanguardSTEM hyperspace. We really want to get into it. So we're going to walk you through everything that's in that paper, which we've given you plenty of time to read. So now we're being multimodal and talking about it. We'll have the transcripts of this. There will be audio. So you can get at this material. So I'm gonna hit it over to Anika so she can talk us through our next phase.
All right, so no more excuses after this. After this, you're not allowed to say you don't know what our paper is about or that you haven't read it. We gave y'all 6 months and now we're giving you a whole show. Like Jadida said, you've got it all. We've given so much. And so we are going to get right into it. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what we've done so far this season since we've put out the paper. So we started off strong in January, right around our paper coming out. We have done so many shows with and for you all. I have loved every second of it. We had mentoring with Verona Montgomery. We had Black Histories, Black Futures with Nicole Collins-Perry, which was amazing, in conversation with Tech Bridge Girls. We had, oh my goodness, I can't even think of all of them. We had Black and Green, y'all. We had so many amazing guests as well for our book club. Please get all of those books, support Black women authors. We have really had some amazing reads. And I've already read more books just doing this show the past 6 months than I read the entire last year. So I am feeling like galaxy brain right now. So it really has been amazing. We're so grateful to our community for participating in all of our shows, to our guests for giving us the time and sharing their expertise with us. How can I forget my mother? Ooh, don't let her see this one. She was also a wonderful guest for our COVID-19 show. And all of our authors, we were so happy to be able to give away books to our community members. We loved seeing you guys participate in conversation with our authors as well. So definitely comment below and tell us what your favorite book was from this season.
Yes, so good, so good. Yes, I mean, when you said Black and Green, I was like, oh, remember the gems that Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson dropped on us? Like, were we ready? I don't think we were ready for that. And I wasn't gonna say anything, but I was gonna shout out your mother, because you're not gonna get me in trouble in these streets. Like, it's not going down. So yeah, we hope you've enjoyed our season. If you haven't been with us for very long, we definitely break our shows in the season. So this is our season finale, but we will be back in the fall with fresh new content. And actually we have surprises for you, which we will only tease, because if we told you, it wouldn't be a surprise. But we're really excited. Now, to the comment that Anika made, why are we doing all this? I mean, number one, we are Team Too Much. We stay in that lane. That's our lane. We're working on it. Mental Health Month, we took a break so that we could get our lives together. But really what we're trying to do is we're trying to build STEM identity, build and support STEM identity among our community, which we call the VS Village. That's Black, Indigenous, women of color, and non-binary folks of color in STEM. We want to make sure that there's a space for us to be our full selves 100,000%. And so what we did was we built a lot of programming. VanguardSTEM is an experimental space. It's a reactive space. It's a place where we come to learn, grow, and innovate. And so we have built a lot of programming over the years that we've been around. And so our paper was a really awesome way for us to come together and really try to get down both our programming, but also the praxis, the theory of why we do it. So, when you're thinking about us, think about the fact that we are building and growing a STEM identity. In particular, we're trying to build intersectional STEM identity. We'll break all of that down as we go. But I just wanna, with my sister girl, just flex a little bit on that good. Like, is that our paper? Is that our paper? Is that our cover? Do we have is that us on this cover? Look at that. And listen, you want to hear about words with friends? Like, Anika, who put this together? Tell us about everyone to help us get this in.
So our wonderful team of science sisters, truly, helped us to put together not only this paper, but all of the programming that VanguardSTEM has put out over the last almost 6 years to today, actually. If I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken. But yes, our wonderful science sisters helped us put this together. You can check out the paper for yourself to see our wonderful timeline of programming, but that is not just Jadida and I. That's also Natasha Berryman, that's Leland Carrington, that's Christelle Vilfrank, and Danielle Lee, who helped us put together this amazing body of work of the theory behind VanguardSTEM and every single thing that you have seen up until pretty much the day this paper came out. And we would not be VanguardSTEM without those folks. And we definitely would not have this wonderful paper that we have blessed y'all with without those folks. So thank you so much to them.
That's right. The world is welcome and we are very grateful. So thank you to this team that helped us do this work. So this is what we're going to be covering today. So Anika and I are going to be running you through it, but just know this was a team effort. And we already thinking about what our next papers are going to be with our team that we got now. Like we are constantly thinking about ways to change the game. So that's where we're going today. We want to get into it. So we're just going to jump right in. Okay. So we want to talk about an intersectional STEM identity. Okay. So we're going all the way in. So for those of you who don't know about intersectionality, that's Kimberly Crenshaw's work. You should definitely go and cite it. It has a longer intellectual history than that, but certainly folks point to that 1989 paper as one of the focal points around which the idea and sort of language of intersectionality comes. We're not going to go into one-on-one on this. You should read the paper if you're interested in that. But what we want to do is talk about how we were trying to construct an intersectional STEM identity, right? Like that we wanted to be our full science self, but we also wanted to be our full human self. And we didn't want to give up any part of that in order to do this work, right? So, when we started out, we came out with our mission statement that was basically to create a community where we could advocate for ourselves and our STEM interests without assimilation. Like that was our whole goal. And so all of our programming is behind that notion. It started with, we were very inspired by the work of Carlone and Johnson from 2007 that basically talked about, that building science identity and women of color in STEM. And that the three core tenets of that were that in order to build research-based or altruistic science identity, you needed to have recognition. So you need to be recognized. You had to recognize yourself and be recognized by what they called meaningful others as a science person. You needed to demonstrate competence in the field that you were interested in, and then you needed a chance to perform that work. So we've always been about that. So, I know, Anika, you ran our social media for a long time before you switched to chief. Can you talk to us a little bit about that like recognition part and like why it was so important?
Absolutely. I would definitely say that Carlone and Johnson paper from 2007 was one of the first academic papers that I read and really saw myself in. So even in reading that was recognition. And so I think that the way that we try to do this in Vanguard STEM is something that's constant, and it really does show up in our social media, whether it's our Woman Crush Wednesday in STEM articles, our Queer Crush Wednesday, that's always a tongue twister, articles, and just the way that we interact on social media, always highlighting and shouting out the folks who are in the field with their sleeves rolled up and doing the work, regardless of what stage they're at, because it really is important to be recognized, to affirm that identity. It's a way that we practice that nurturing that you were talking about before. And it's really critical, and it really does show, this paper more than anything, the intentionality behind everything that we do, whether it's a single tweet or an article, that there's this literature-based practice behind it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's interesting because that's where we started, right? Like we knew from first principles that we wanted to create this space where one could be themselves. And so, much against sort of the grain that was happening at the time when we started doing this, we didn't want to like force folks into being professional or to, look like they were trying to just be like someone else. We wanted to catch them in their element. And so the questions that we were asking were about like not just their science, but like what brought them to it, and who are their women of color and STEM sheroes. And when we evolved Queer Crush Wednesday, from Women Crush Wednesday, which Christelle came up with, to Queer Crush Wednesday, which you came up with, we were able to start to ask questions about identity and how people wanted to show up in the world, and to make sure that there was room for them to have flexibility around that. And all of that was around building a sense of belonging. But I think the thing that made the work we did special was it wasn't to belong in the space that existed. It was to create a space to feel like one belongs. And that came out of the work with, sort of Wenger and et al. In 1999, looking at communities of practice and how you build a sense of belonging. So to your point about, coming into a literature-based approach, we were looking at those works, and in those ways, those papers talked about imagination, right, and how you basically one of the ways you can build STEM identity and a sense of belonging is through this sense of imagination and perceiving yourself as a part of whatever the community of practices that you want to be a part of, right? So, we wanted to create a space where you could be a scientist or a scientist in training or a later career scientist, like you could just be that. Then there was engagement, meaning that you're creating shared histories, right? Like you're creating a story together with the people around you, so that not just are you seeing yourself in the community, but you're a part of what makes it different. And then lastly is alignment, which is effectively placing yourself like further along in that sense of community, right? So like it's not just you, it's you as a part of the broader context. And all of those things were very important to us, and the particular mix of them, right? Like the amount to which you feel a part of it versus the amount to which you feel like you can change it. We wanted VS to be a responsive space in that way, because we felt like all of that would help all those of us who are in the field, right? It's very much a for us, by us approach to continue on. And I think when we were writing the paper, you and I talked a lot about that, right? That like where we started was from a sense of like creation and also making both space and, amassing a particular sense of gravity, right? And so just thinking about, creating an intersectional STEM identity is to bring your full self, no matter what, into the STEM space and not force yourself to belong or assimilate into what is, but to really find a community that is also invested in making something that fits for us without assimilation. So that's where we started. And we felt justified in this because when you look at the numbers, as Anika said, we are still nerds. So when you look at the numbers, like, girls of color are interested in science just like everybody else. So the fact that when you get to the end of the PhD, the numbers are so low, there's something that's in the water. There's nothing wrong with the folks. And so we really wanted to build the sense of agency and autonomy. So that's where we started. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. As you were kind of giving this summary of this first section of the paper, it really made me think about who this paper is for. And I feel like there's just so much in it. As you mentioned, there's a lot about the Vanguard STEM programming specifically that we've put together. But in addition to it, all of this background that you've been sharing, I would say that this paper is really beneficial to a wide variety of folks. So if you're someone who's like a program manager for programs that are catering towards minoritized or marginalized students, I think that this paper is a great read because it gives a lot of resources and background about how to build communities of practice, like you were saying, that really will have the deepest, most effective impact on the folks participating in them. And I would also say, like you said, for us, by us. We received a lot of really great feedback from our community after our paper was published about folks who really saw themselves in this. And that's something that I've taken from VanguardSTEM over the years in general, is in this research that we've done, in reading all of the theory behind this work, finding the peer-reviewed publications that really speak to what I'm experiencing and how I can make my experience in science the best. And if there's a place where I'm not having a good experience, it really helps me to identify what that is, whether it's the lack of recognition or not being able to perform the tasks that I feel affirm my expertise, or not having that imagination, engagement, alignment in communities. It really is just such a wonderful summary of all of the work that has, or not all of the work, but a great body of work that has gone into establishing what it is that really does make for the best communities and cultures for women and non-binary people of color in STEM.
That's so good. I'm so glad that you made that point because it is absolutely true. And, you know, it's a long paper, it's 30 pages. So you're going to like tuck in and spend some time there, right? Like pages on stacks on stacks on stacks, right? And, you know, we did that for the reasons that Anika said. Like we wanted folks to have the frameworks in the background, but also to, you know, tacitly affirm the fact that like we didn't invent this stuff, right? There are folks that are doing work on this that are experts, but oftentimes there's not very much crossover between the folks that are like experts in how systems work, how cultures work, and how to build culture, and folks in a science culture or STEM culture. And so we felt like, because we care a lot about this issue, like a number of folks, that what we wanted to do was figure out a way to pull as much of that material as we can. We learned about it, we talked to folks who were writing these articles, and then we tried to build systems and programs that responded to that, you know? And so that's part of the reason why we consider ourselves responsive, because we evolve and grow as we learn more, we do better, you know? So we're constantly doing, that's how we went from, you know, focusing specifically on women of color in STEM, which we really care about. We come from a Black, queer, feminist perspective. That's intentional, and we do not intend to change that at all. But we realized that there were queer folks of color, particularly queer Black folks, that were not, they didn't have a space in STEM. And this is a whole nother conversation that we definitely want to have, especially during Pride. But like, we felt like we could make more room inside the Vanguard STEM hyperspace. We'll get there in just a second, to provide space for all of the different identities that we hold as folks of color in STEM. So I really appreciate you saying that, because it's so true that like those things help us to not only help us to share these works, but also help us navigate and name what we're going through. So that's where we started. And I think, you know, keeping in mind that we are incredibly equipped with our technical skills to create STEM futures that are rooted in liberatory practice and praxis is sort of what motivates us. And so, you know, as we were thinking about it, it seems like we started to get into a sense of like how we do science. And so I was wondering, Anika, if you could walk us through, you know, one of the crown jewels of our paper.
Absolutely. So if you don't already know the title of it by now, first of all, what? But right there in the title, we use an intersectional scientific methodology. And I am so excited to finally have just open range to talk about this, because honestly, I don't stop talking about it anyway. So this is just regular conversation as the show is themed. But the ISM, the Intersectional Scientific Methodology, is one of my favorite parts of the paper, not only because of the content of it, but also because of the moment that we came up with it. I remember sitting and writing, and one of the things that we do in Vanguard STEM with all of our initiatives is that we do full write-ups of them. And those write-ups are often structured with the scientific method. So there's a hypothesis, there is embedded analysis and methods and metrics that go into every single piece of programming that we do. Believe it or not, we don't just tweet stuff out. We don't just start writing papers and articles without putting all of this thought behind it. Exactly. There's a lot that goes into things before they ever come out. And so we were trying to figure out a way to describe what it is that we do with Vanguard STEM. And we had this realization that Vanguard STEM is just another way that we practice science. And so then how could we describe the way that we practice science in Vanguard STEM and in our labs, or wherever people who don't work in labs work? I don't know, that's not my business. But yeah, so we wanted to talk about how we practice science, and also emphasize that those are not two separate forms of practicing science. They're just two separate outcomes. And so that's really where the intersectional scientific methodology came from. It was a way to describe what we were already doing in the processes specifically behind Vanguard STEM. So what is the intersectional scientific method? So if you look at the beautiful figure in our paper, you will see that the intersectional scientific method has at its core the same steps of the scientific method that I know I remember seeing listed on the door of my fourth grade science classroom. So that basis for it is still there. But what we did is we looked at how we as individual scientists come together to collectively build towards both full self-expression in our cultural and technical identities. So really it takes a look at what we bring to the table in our identity as being just as valuable as the technical expertise. And so that starts off with embodied observation. And so that embodied observation is the first step of the intersectional scientific method when we talk about observation. And really a key component of this was Donna Haraway's work, which is cited in our paper. And Donna Haraway talks about this idea of objectivity and describes objectivity as this sort of neutral, unaffected, and removed view. And we know that as scientists, we are told from day one that the way to do science is from an objective perspective. But reading this feminist work, we really called into question, what is objectivity? And I love this quote where Donna Haraway says that objectivity is sort of a conquering gaze from nowhere. And I don't know about you, but that sounds real colonialist to me. And that's not what I'm about. How could I be, honestly? And so we really wanted to reimagine the way that we approach practicing science as not being neutral or unaffected, but to really talk about what Haraway calls our situated knowledges, which are the things that we know that we can only know because of the identities that we embody, our embodied observations. So we're talking about your culture and your specific identity and the expertise, the situated knowledges, and buzzword here, biases, right? So we always want to talk about an unbiased approach, but is that really what we want? My desire to give to my community is a bias. And my interests can even be considered that way. And so we don't want to remove those from our approach to science. We want to talk about them and talk about the way that influences then the next steps of our intersectional scientific method. So with that, the next step is then our embedded context. And so the embedded context acknowledges the conditions under which we practice science. And so that are the structural oppressions and barriers to practicing science, as well as our cultures and the things that influence basically what we deem as worthy of investigation, and then our ability to then investigate those things. So that embedded context informs the questions that we ask, the research that we do, what research we're able to do, what resources we have at our disposal to do that research. And all of that then affects the hypothesis that, again, only can come from you. And then the next step of the intersectional scientific method is that collective impact, which is something that we felt was really important. I think that might have been even the first section that we had that we knew that we wanted for the intersectional scientific method, which talked about how women of color, non-binary people of color in particular, are doing the work that they do for generative, restorative, and creative purposes that benefit our community and that take into account who our meaningful others are, that there's a greater reason behind a lot of the work that we do. And because of that, we're always looking at that impact, particularly with VS. And so, yeah, definitely if you have a particular section of the ISM that you feel that your work really embodies or that spoke to you, you can comment that below. And I'll turn over to Jadida to see what comments you have about those first three sections of the ISM before we get into maybe the most important section.
Yeah, I as you were talking, I was like, ooh, we should get the file. So here I am trying to be responsive to you as you talk. So there it is. That's all that Anika was talking about there. And it's just it was so fun, as you said, to come into a recognition of this work. And I feel like what we sort of figured out was that this helped us to understand the fullness of who we are, that we can know and be experts at what the scientific method is, and not that it's perfect. It's, it still has its seed in some of the objectivity, but like to really remove and name, remove what we can, and certainly name what exists there, I think is really important. And one of the things I think that sticks out to me, first, is that point you made about wanting to have collective impact. So that ties directly back to the work with Carlone and Johnson, where there were different kinds of science identity you could build, and one of them was an altruistic one, and it was the sense that like your notion of who meaningful others are, the folks who matter, weren't just science folks; they were also community members. They were also family members. It was a much broader sense of that, and so I think keeping in mind that like there is a science identity that includes a larger scope of meaningful others is really important. And the other thing, and you sort of hit on it, and I just wanted to underscore it, is that what we maintain is that women of color, particularly queer folks of color, non-binary folks of color, are incredibly proficient at navigating both of these spaces, the cultural sense and understanding what the sort of like plays are that are nonverbal and just like in the ether, but also being technical experts, right? Like, so if you have, for example, I have a PhD in astrophysics, so you not gonna come at me any kind of way talking about black holes. You just not, because I know that I'm an expert at that. But you also not gonna come at me any kind of way about like intersectionality, because I've spent a lot of time working on that too, right? So to really be able to hold these things together in my hands, but the truth of the matter is that everyone is operating from a sense of subjectivity. And so just because you may not know that you're doing it, it may not be on the surface, doesn't mean it's any less true. So we're all coming in, to your point, with biases and standpoints. We're coming in with, frameworks and cultural touch points, whether they come from the African diaspora or they don't, right? And so I think that that's really important. We are writing this from the perspective that humans do science, and that means that they get their humanness on it. Like, science is not some like inherently good or untouched thing. So I think the way that you've described it is 100% true, and like how we sense it and feel it. And what we hope is that folks will really think about, when you're figuring out what research you think is important to do, or dismissing other research, which happens way too much in the field, in all of our fields, that you'll think about, okay, so what's my embedded context? Like, what is it that I'm bringing to the table individually? What is my structural sense of it? What's the historical sense that is informing my sense of what's relevant or important? So I think that's important. And then maybe the last thing is to constantly be like, we're scientists, right? Like, we're constantly iterating. Okay, we did the experiment this way. I'm thinking about your experiment, which I'm not even going to try to describe, but I'm just thinking about how you've told me different things about, oh, well, I'm going to try this time. My mice are going to go longer in this way or the other. Like, that's born into us, a sense of iterating and trying to understand independent variables. And so, what we're trying to say is like, continue to get better, continue to practice, continue to learn from every time you do science or act in the way of being a scientist. Is there a way that you can reduce bias and make more space for more folks? So yeah, you're right. The ISM has been such a fun thing to think about and share with the world. And we hope that you'll read more about it in our paper. And I don't think we've said it explicitly yet, but you should definitely cite our paper. We published intentionally in an open access, but peer-reviewed journal. And so we would really love it if you cite our work, because we worked really hard on it over many years. And so we are sharing this information because we want you to have it, but it would be great if you cited it. So that's what I thought.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And I especially love your point about the fact that we are humans and we're all bringing our own biases into the way that we practice science. And specifically, I think that we wrote that we're accounting for the different perspectives. And so I think what happens often is that there is a perspective that is really considered to be the norm, and we all know what that norm is, but it's often dismissed as even being a perspective, and that truly is what has been framed as objective, but it's not. It's not. And really, I would argue, and this is a whole nother conversation, there's no such thing as objectivity, but that's for another time. But yes, I also wanted to touch on that very last step that really ties the entire intersectional scientific method together, which is the iteration. So for us, that's revising our approach, our questions, our experiments, our programming, as we identify structural oppressions that we may not have taken into account on our first go through, or that we might not have been able to incorporate into our programming, that we might not have had the expertise on our team or within our community to tackle, ultimately with the goal of disrupting those structures, which really does take us into then that next section of the paper, which is sort of what does it look like when we disrupt those structures? And this is something that we've been talking about all season. You've heard us talk about the hyperspace, and now we get to dive into that as well. The hyperspace is where we disrupt, it's where we build, and it's where Jedida's going to take us next.
Oh my goodness, yes, right. So like I love, Anika, the way that you describe that, right? Because we're walking you through over years, right? Like the process of how we're iterating to that point. And so, we start with, okay, we want to be our best selves and we don't want to be inhibited and we're not trying to be like you. We want to be uniquely us in the ways that we can be that better than anyone else, right? Like, and then we were thinking about how, yes, look at how it, helps us do our science. So then we thought, okay, well, then we need our own like space. We need our own space. And, this work is situated in some of the intellectual history that comes from Mia Ong and her work on women of color and STEM, in particular about counterspaces. It comes from Solorzano et al. 20,000, really? That's where we're going today? 2000 that are talking about counterspaces, right? And counterspaces are the word and the language is coming more into the science space. And the idea is that there are these spaces where marginalized communities can come together and basically catch our breath, right? And the Ong et al. Work in particular points to different places and spaces that can become counterspaces. They're often outside of the mainstream, but there are departments and spaces that have actually made counterspaces in the central space, in the central physical space of the departments. Shout out to the American Institute of Physics Team Up report, which I was a task force member on, so full disclosure, who did some work on that and looking at institutions who have really made their intention around counterspaces. But counterspaces had, up until, as far as we could tell in literature, had mostly been thought about as physical spaces, right? The places that you go to catch your breath. So it might be, it might be a group. I think Anika could point you to some examples of that, which she probably will, right? Like it might be a group or an organization. I remember in graduate school, for me, it was a Black Graduate Network. When we'd have parties and we'd get together and we'd have learning sessions and people would give all kinds of stuff. And it was a place, a physical place that I went where I knew that my cultural touch points were shared and I didn't have to explain myself. And that's an important work. And counterspaces are clearly how many of us have made it this far. And so there's nothing wrong with that at all. But what we realized is that as on our team, Black women in STEM, that oftentimes we were one or a few in our science context. And so there wasn't that same ability to come together in a physical space in the same way, because we just weren't all in one place. And so VanguardSTEM really started as an online platform to really exploit the fact that social media brings us all together, for better or for worse. And so we wanted to exploit that. And so throughout the years, we've basically taken VS from a counterspace, one that was built online, to a hyperspace, which is where we feel like we sit right now. And so, for the literature nerds, we'll just say that, we think that, so there were basically 4 kinds of counterspace in the On It All work. We think that we're a 5th kind of counterspace, which we're calling hyperspace. And the reasons why are because it's innately virtual. We like to say we were born digital, because we were. That it's persistent. You can always come in contact with Vanguard STEM, either through our social media or our website or our Medium page. There's any number of ways that you can engage us. We're multi-generational. We've always, from the very beginning, wanted to connect emerging and established women of color and non-binary folks of color in STEM. And we're also structurally focused, right? So, we do want to maintain spaces where we can catch our breath, but we also, after we catch our breath, we want to figure out how to like fix all of this, right? Like we are not the problem. The problem is the system. And so so all of those pieces really help us to get at this notion of hyperspace. So we view hyperspace along the intellectual lineage of counterspaces. It's just more persistent and innately virtual. So you could think of the hyperspace as a fluid construction of what can be, and is not necessarily responsive to what is now. And so that's what we're trying to say there, is that we want a generative space, right? We want to be able to come from a place of positivity and creation, rather than just always responding to oppressive, marginalizing situations. And so we pull from, speculative fiction with the word, right, hyperspace, and thinking about higher dimensional space times that can coexist with the current universe that we're in, but can also be accessed independently. So we show up and peace out and move through the hyperspace in whatever ways we need to at the time. So the goal is not just to catch your breath, which it is, but it's to find your tribe, find your people, and then create what you want to see in the world, independent of what exists. And that for us is what the hyperspace does. And maybe the last thing I'll say, and Anika talked about situated knowledges and like making sure to name, frameworks and subjectivity. The other piece that we were pulling from work from Barton and Tan in 2019 is this notion of rightful presence, right? That like, we legitimately belong here. We don't need permission to be here. We don't need approval or any of that, that like we deserve to be here. So we want that sense of place, time, and rightful presence to be acknowledged and respected. So I think, if you're thinking about a hyperspace, it should be generative, liberatory, and flexible. So I'll stop there. And I want to make sure I get to hear, because we both love that hyperspace. So tell me your thoughts, sis.
Well, I think that there's a few things. So first, I think a great example of the fact that we really were on the cutting edge of creating this type of counterspace is that now there are so many spaces emerging that look a lot like ours and what we have been building over the past 6 years. Also, the other online communities that existed prior to us. So there's Black in STEM, to name just one amazing group that has been in this virtual space. There's a long history of folks that came before us, which we touched on a bit at the beginning. But if you read our paper, you'll truly see that, from Shirley Malcolm on through sort of VS, and now we're seeing other organizations and groups popping up in this similar space, that there really is an intergenerational notion of building these spaces and communities. And we really are articulating here the purpose of ours and how it's situated a bit differently than some of those that came before it, and also than some that exist concurrent with us. And I just love that. And I think that it really does show that we were kind of on the cutting edge, seeing that folks are transitioning into spaces that look a lot like ours now that there's nowhere else to go. So we're seeing that when folks are deprived of that like physical connection with the folks that they define as meaningful others, that they turn to create spaces like the one that we have already established. But anyway, the other thing that I think is really wonderful about VanguardSTEM's Hyperspace that we wrote about in the paper, and I don't think you touched on this, is that we manifest with a physical presence when needed as well. So we were born digitally, but if you've ever been able to catch up with us at a conference, then we have secret sessions at conferences. that are literally invitation only, and you come and you sit with us, and we just take up space, and those have been really amazing. We've also had our guerrilla mentoring sessions at our booth, which you know our booth is the place to be if you're at a conference. We don't sit behind a table and talk at you about Vanguard STEM. We bring you into our space. Come sit down with us. Come cry with us. There's a box of tissues. Come have snacks. Leave a piece of advice behind for other folks. Come sit and receive on the ground mentoring from folks in our community who just want to be in conversation with you and each other. And that's one of the wonderful ways that our hyperspace manifests in a physical setting. And it's always very clear to see that what we've built is different than what exists. And we don't ask for permission to build that space. We don't ask for permission to take over the empty booth next to us to create more space. We come into these places and we acknowledge that we do have this rightful presence, whether or not other folks choose to acknowledge it. And I just love to see not only the way that it exists online and other folks, might see us, try to be us, or the way that it exists when we show up at these conferences and we do catch that side eye from the booth across the way where they're like, well, what are they doing over there? What are they spraying out into this crowd to draw in these people? But it really is amazing to see the hyperspace that we've built and how it contrasts and from spaces that exist and builds from the folks who came before us and were doing this work as the foundation that we stand upon.
Yes, so much truth. Yes. And listen, never miss an opportunity to shout out Dr. Stephanie Page, who is life goals. Like, she's so awesome. She is the creator and originator of Black in STEM and really the whole lane of like Black science digital space. Like, you cannot talk about any of this if you're not talking about the visionary that is Dr. Stephanie Page. And if you want to know more about it, you should read Dr. Baranda Montgomery's paper. I think it's 2014 or 2015, where she chronicles some of these early digital spaces for folks of color in STEM and how to mentor in those spaces. So don't miss those resources. We are of a piece, the journal we published in was Genealogy, and we wanted to publish there on purpose because we wanted to talk through being a part of the genealogy of what has been and what is to come. A fun fact, Anika mentioned Dr. Malcolm. So Dr. Shirley Malcolm is the GOAT. And she was talking about basically intersectionality before the Crenshaw intersectionality paper came out. So just, I don't know, Black women in STEM just be staying on the fluid edge. So we're really excited about that. And you're right, like, we will show up at a conference and show out, like, sis, like, it's too much. And so, one of the fun parts of being on the team, the VanguardSTEM team, is that we can think of all these ways to do this work, but it's always fun to get on the ground with folks and have them, whether it's on the ground really like at conference crashing, like Anika was talking about, or in the digital space, and have folks realize that they too can take up space and be their full selves, and they don't have to give up who that is, who they are, to do this work. And so we're in constant dialogue with our community, who we call the VS Village, to deploy these bi-directional exchanges of situated knowledge and expertise, right? So that, like, we're sharing with each other, how do you take up space? How do you make sure that you can be who you want to be, and to make sure that you're assigning, responsibility where it should be placed, right? And I think that sense of persistent opportunities to develop and evolve STEM identity, there it is again, right? Because we're very committed to that. And outside of what the strictures of the STEM culture is, that is what making a hyperspace is. And it's true, we will have a secret session, and you just, if you know, that's sort of how it goes. And so, as the world is opening back up, check for us. We may or may not make ourselves apparent. We may be in the hyperspace. You may not be able to get there, but we are. So that's always true. And then I think the other thing that it's really important to keep in mind as we're sort of like trying to summarize all the work is that we're not, like, we know what we're doing. Like, this is not accidental. To Anika's point, it's very intentional. We legit think about everything we do. And so one of the ways that we really try to exploit our understanding of the way the world works is through making sure that our content is influencing the kind of content that you receive, right? Like we all know that we are all subject to algorithms, and there's only so much you can do with a Twitter algorithm or an Instagram algorithm. There are all kinds of complaints we make about, can you just put it back to chronological? Listen, that's not what the point of the show is, but I'm just saying. But to understand, and I want to definitely shout you out, Anika, here, because at the time you're managing our social media, but like we were writing about how the purpose of the material, the weekly Women Crush Wednesday in STEMs, the original articles that we were writing, the curated content, for example, around mental health and the like, those were designed to alter the kind of material you got in your feed, whether or not it was from BS or not. Because the more you got served material from us of this nature, with us and all our glorious melanin and all our glorious scientific expertise and situated knowledge, made it so you were more likely to receive that content. So we were, again, trying to make space for and around you that you didn't even have to do anything about. It's just you're more likely to see you in your own timeline, and you, the science person, not just you, the person of color, melanated human on the planet. And that for us is really important, right? That like we want to be making sure that not just you have to always be doing the work to make the world better for yourself, but that like some of the structures that you're embedded in are also doing that. And I think I'll leave this last point to my colleague. I think she likes to make it. And can you talk to us about, I don't know, identity versus influence, and any thoughts you might have there?
So I don't know why you would do this to me, but I'll try to keep it short and not go off on too much of a tangent, not go full, connecting the dots with pieces of yarn on this beautiful backdrop behind me. But we all know that influence is really sort of the currency of social media, and we call the folks who are the best at manipulating that algorithm influencers. And so that really made us think about, in describing the work that we do with VS, what is it that we do and how do we use that influence? And like Jedidah said, we do sort of turn it on its head. And it's really not that I want to be on your page. Please do not. Like, honestly, I do not want to be on your page. But truly, we want to use the influence that we amass as we gain followers to help build your identity rather than to showcase ours. And that's really the purpose of VanguardSTEM. And to Jedidah's point about sort of hijacking the algorithm, I can say somebody did post me on their page, and I saw myself on my Instagram Explore page on an account that I don't follow, like last week. And that's really what VanguardSTEM is trying to do. We don't want you to just see us. The goal is never to see VanguardSTEM on all of your pages. The goal is really to see yourself served back to you in your social media algorithms. And that's really what it is that we're trying to use here. We're not trying to influence for the sake of having influence, but really for a collective community influence. And for me, that's really how VanguardSTEM has become such a powerful community, because interacting on social media with just VanguardSTEM brought me to Jedidah's page. It brought me to Danielle Lee's page. It brought me to Stephanie Page's page. And that exists in this online hyperspace that we're constantly building and connecting these networks of individuals. And, I've heard several folks use this phrase, and I just love it so much. And I just can't get enough of it. And that's, we are here for causes over clout.
Yo.
That's really, that's the summary of our paper. That's it, right? Causes, not clout. And that is to say that everything that we do is intentional. Like Jedidah said, there's programming, there's metrics, there's analysis, there's iteration and experimentation, and an analysis of that impact behind every single thing that we do. And it is never, well, how many followers do I have? Or do people see me as an expert. It is truly about creating this space for and by women and non-binary people of color in STEM to, as our abstract says, to affirm your rightful presence without assimilation, right? That's really what we want to create. We want to create this space in which you can practice science and show up fully as yourself and know that that is perfect, and that there is no need for assimilation, and that the structures and people who would ask you to assimilate are wrong. Flat out, they're doing it wrong. And they're really, if you take it back to the ISM, taking away from your ability to ultimately achieve those scientific outcomes by minimizing the way that you're able to observe the world and devaluing your perspective. And so really, that's what the ultimate goal of this hyperspace is. It's why VanguardSTEM does the things that we do. And it's why we try to use influence to impact a greater shift in your algorithm or in the STEM enterprise in general.
You see why I asked her to talk about it though, right? Like, I mean, like, you see that, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, I mean, I got a little flack, but I'm just saying you saw that, right? Exactly. 100%, right? And, you know, I think there are so many pieces in that paper that like we think you will be blessed by and you should read and cite us. And as we're moving forward, you know, we're sort of getting to the, we could talk about this indefinitely. We literally talk about it every time we get together. So like, we're going to try to like pull out of your, of your ear at this particular moment. But one of the things that like, I think is signature to what we do, apart from the like constantly trying to iterate and figure out what's going on, is that piece that's generative, right? Like, so what do we do next? It's not actually just enough to like make sure that you or we are aware that like there are structural things at play that are actually inhibiting your ability to be great. That's not actually enough. It's important. We have spent a lot of time making sure that that is out there. It's not actually enough to just make space to catch your breath, to like have a persistent space to be in the midst of these structural oppressions and discrimination and all of the isms. That's not actually enough either. What we want to do is break all of that down and build something new where everyone can be their best selves. That means that like there are some processes that we just have to stop doing as a field, as fields, as a science STEM culture. And we want to be, again, at the fluid edge of making sure that that's happening. So, you know, we want to be creating again. And, you know, we always thinking, what are we going to do next? How are we going to continuously affirm that it doesn't have to be like this, that like by the time, you know, Anika's in the doctor chair and there's a person that she's mentoring, that like that person deals with much less of this, and not in the incremental way either. Like no, like we gonna fix this. And so at VanguardSTEM, we want to be a part of that. Now, VanguardSTEM is a signature program of a parent nonprofit called the Search Foundation. And up until now, you haven't necessarily heard a bunch about the Search Foundation, but that is going to change very quickly. We have like, I don't even know how to describe the fire that we are building behind the scenes for you. Like, legit, y'all are not ready for what we gonna put out in these streets. And I'm not supposed to say it, it's a surprise, but keep your peepers peeled, like, and or your ears open, or whatever your sensory experience is. Make sure you got it up tuned to 100, because we have gifts for you. We are here to perturb the system a little bit more. We are constantly trying to put really equity in action, right? Like, we just trying to make the world better for all of us. It just so happens that we are invested in it because we have received such a raw deal. So we're going to be hitting on some confidence, some opportunities to perform your STEM identity. And we here to stand. We here to support you and to be behind you 100%. So please do watch out for some new new in these streets from Vanguard STEM, from the Hyperspace, and from the Search Foundation, whose tagline is using STEM as a tool for social justice. And I'm just trying to tell you, we about that life. We are about that life. So stay tuned for that. As we wrap up, Anika, you want to talk about our book club and what we got going on for the month of June? Tell us everything.
Absolutely. So usually Vanguard STEM goes on a summer hiatus, and we will be having a bit of a summer hiatus, but as Jedidah said, you gotta keep a lookout. You gotta keep a lookout. It's gonna be, the summer's gonna be hot, I'm telling you, okay? So for the month of June, our book is, I can't even, listen, we're bad at keeping secrets, but this is all we can give you for now. So keep your eyes open, y'all. But before we go on our summer hiatus, we will be featuring Black, Brown, and Bruised, how racialized STEM education, how racialized STEM education stifles innovation by Ebony McGee. That will be our book for the month of June. We're super excited to be featuring Ebony McGee's book. So stay tuned for that segment. We also, as always, give away one book per week on each Friday of the month. You can check out our social media. We're at VanguardSTEM in all of the places, everywhere. And if you are a queer woman of color, non-binary person of color in STEM, and you would like to be featured on VanguardSTEM, we feature all folks all year round, but it's Pride Month, y'all. And I have already been featured. So I need the rest of y'all to come on. You can find out how to be featured as our Woman Crush Wednesday in STEM or Queer Crush Wednesday in STEM on our social media as well. We would love to highlight you, to recognize your expertise in science. Jed has already said this, but don't forget to subscribe, to follow us on Instagram or Twitter at VanguardSTEM. Comment below if you have anyone who you would like to see featured. Comment below if you would like to win a copy of the book too. We might pick one of y'all and give you a copy of this wonderful book by Ebony McGee that we are featuring this month. And last but not least, please stay safe, y'all. The world is opening back up. Please stay safe.
You're right. I'm not even gonna comment on that. So glad to have you. Thank you, Anika, for being the best co-host ever, and for talking through all this. It's fun to finally get our thoughts onto the tape, as they say. Thank y'all to the authors for writing. Thank you for listening or watching or however you're taking in this material. We will be back soon. In just a second, we're going to interview Dr. Ebony McGee about that book that Anika was telling you about for our June book club. So keep reading on that. And we'll see you next time, y'all. Thank you for season 7 of On the Vanguard, conversations with women of color and non-binary folks of color in STEM. You up, sis?
Last but not least, I would like to thank the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation for the generous funding that makes this show possible. If you would like to donate to help make this possible, help make all the other things that we do possible, help make the summer hotter than ever, you can find us on PayPal. It's the Search Foundation. That's SERCH Foundation. And, we are accepting coins, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a wonderful season.